All right, you're checking out the Big Douglas Show. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. I am Big Douglas. That's the rapper Big Pooh. And he is Freddie Coleman, and we appreciate him stopping by the show today. Thanks, Freddie.
I kind of need a nickname. We got Big Doug and Big Pooh. Little Freddie doesn't exactly work with Big Doug and Big Pooh.
No, no, you'll have to be Big Freddie today, I suppose.
That'll work. That'll work.
Freddie, before we get into the sports stuff, I'm curious. You and Fitzsimmons have been together for 6 years now, if I did my homework right.
You did your homework right, yes.
What is it? Well, I have two things. I'm curious, is that something that y'all pitched to the mothership, or did they come to you and say, hey, we've got this really good idea, and I think the two of you will work well together?
They came to pretty much both of us and said that we were doing solo stuff apart. Ian was doing stuff on the weekends, and I was doing stuff on the weekday. And they said, what about you two together? And I said, absolutely, because doing a solo show is cool, but when you have to carry the load, that's a lot of responsibility. And I'm not as young as I used to be to carry that kind of responsibility. So it's really cool having someone who's a friend. He's been a friend for a long, long time. And it was not a hard sell to say, hey, how about you and Ian together? I said, absolutely, because we have been looking to have more of a full-time presence on ESPN Radio. And it's been a worthwhile partnership. There's no doubt about it. So that was not something that I had to think about or had any misgivings. I said, that would be the guy I would want to work with if I had a chance to do a two-team, two-person show. And I'm really glad that has been able to come to fruition.
Freddie, how difficult was it during the height of the pandemic when all the sports were suspended to come up with, other than pandemic news, but come up with material for your show every night?
Boy, that's a good question, because that was the one thing that we had a lot of concern about, obviously, because we're in the know with our show being on from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. There's always something going on, whether it's on the field or off the field, involving something that happened on the field. So when everything got shut down, whether it was the NBA or the NCAA tournament, it all happened before Major League Baseball got started. We all got together as a group and said there's storylines out there that we can find more than ever before that maybe got neglected because we were so concerned about live action. And to be honest with you, a big part of what we were able to do to kind of steer the ship and keep it from sinking was when The Last Dance came out. And the minute that came out, all of a sudden, that became a talking point every Monday and sometimes every Tuesday. And we were able to find different aspects about The Last Dance to talk about. For example, Kenny Lattimore. That was the son that Michael Jordan played before he warmed up. We had a chance to have him on, and I'm a huge Kenny Lattimore fan. And it was a mutual admiration society that he was a fan. He's a fan of our show. So it was pretty cool to have him on to talk about being a part of The Last Dance and seeing his sales go up and his Instagram followers increase because of that. So we were able to find different things outside of the realm of live action that we've continued to do today. Just because live action started when baseball happened and the NBA went into the bubble environment, we didn't go away from those stories. But yeah, early on, there was some apprehension. Okay, how are we going to fill 4 hours and not talk about COVID-19 stuff? And through the grace of God and the fact that we're very curious people, we were able to find those things and find those people and have those different kind of storylines.
Did you usually head down at Super Bowl week? Would you usually be down at Radio Row now?
Oh, no. I mean, I understand being down the Radio Row, but for me, I just rather just get ready for the game and talk about it and be in the comforts of my own studio at work, in the comforts of my own home. And I get it. Radio Row is really cool. And I've had a chance to do it one time. And I said, okay, I've done this. I don't have to do it again. I'm good not doing this. So it's really interesting having a lot of virtual Radio Row that's happening this week. And we've gotten a lot of fun things already after the first couple of days. Rob Gronkowski talking about the meme that his mom sent him about daddy, Tom Brady, and son Patrick Mahomes. And then Tom Brady dropping that bomb yesterday saying, oh yeah, I plan on playing until I'm 46, 47 years of age. So even though I have not been down at Radio Row and I've never thought about going down there again, that does mean that a lot of interesting things won't come out, especially with no media being there and everything being done virtually.
This year, obviously, we have Tom Brady back in the Super Bowl, and it was a lot of discussion when he left New England about, was it Bill Belichick or was it Tom Brady, who was responsible most for the winning? Does this Super Bowl trip for Tom Brady kind of put, extra point on his side?
Well, absolutely. But people have to remember that one would not have been successful without the other. And let's call it real. Let's keep it real, guys. They lucked into Tom Brady, a 6th-round draft pick, a guy that was drafted almost 200th in the draft, became the greatest quarterback of all time, maybe even the greatest player of all time, depending on who you talk to in the National Football League. Not too many 6th-round picks do that in any sport, much less the National Football League. So they definitely lucked into it. But he was able to buy into that Patriot way, and he was able that no matter what they were not able to do, he was so great and raised everybody else's level that he was able to override any kind of mistakes or missteps that the New England Patriots had when it came to personnel, and also when it came to putting people around him. But I will say this, Tom Brady's new girlfriend looks a lot better than his old girlfriend, because the old girlfriend didn't want him anymore. But the new girlfriend is ready to take him on, and that relationship's worked pretty good. So the next has it better than the ex right now. So at least for this standpoint, for this season, Tom Brady is winning that battle. And can you even imagine what that conversation is going to sound like? Let's say he wins not just one, but maybe even a couple Super Bowls with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to take Tom Brady to here and bring Bill Belichick down to there, because they're going to say, hey, you have not succeeded without him, but he was able to succeed without you. Then all of a sudden, maybe the narrative, maybe that conversation changes, even though the truth of the matter is, if there was no Tom Brady in New England, there's no way Bill Belichick would have been what he has become. And if there was no Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, there's no way that Tom Brady would have been the quarterback that we've seen and continue to see in the National Football League.
It's insane. This will be number 10 for Tom. They've only played 55 Super Bowls. Yeah. I mean, 10 of the 55 is just ridiculous.
Yeah, you got to put him in the same category with a Bill Russell, who won 11 championships in 13 years. And for my money, he is still the greatest winner that we've ever seen in sports. We've had teams that haven't done what one dude has been able to be a part of, and for that long, over 20, now 21 years in the National Football League. The Montreal Canadiens, when they had their run in the Stanley Cup, that was a 4 or 5 year period. When the Islanders won 4 in a row in the Stanley Cup, that was from 1980 to 1983. In the National Football League, you had dynasties as teams. The Packers in the 1960s, the Steelers in the 70s, the 49ers in the 80s, the Cowboys in the 90s, and the Patriots in the 2000s. But one guy doing this for 20 years at that position, and now he is 43 years of age, he almost threw as many touchdown passes as he's been on planet Earth, 40 to 43. The fact that he's been able to do that, we got to start talking about him in a different kind of rarefied air. And that is the only place where Bill Russell resides, where he won 11 championships in 13 years. If he makes it 7 Super Bowls in 10 years, he continues to separate himself, not just from NFL quarterbacks, NFL players, but maybe anybody else in the last 25 to 30 years of professional sports.
Yeah, that's a great
Very
point.
true. Very true.
Freddie, I'm curious, as we talk about the Washington football team a little bit, what is the national view of them now, do you think? It's easy for us to kind of pinpoint. We're around it a bunch. I'm curious what the national folks think.
I don't think people give enough credit for Ron Rivera saving that organization, because it's one thing for Dan Snyder to completely just be like this for 15 years, what was going on with his organization and a lot of things that were going on that were just not even completely on board from a moral standpoint and from a football standpoint. But it shows you exactly what kind of man Ron Rivera is, that even with cancer, Dan Snyder said, hey, bro, I know you're going through cancer. I know you got things to deal with, but please save me. Please save my organization. And he did it. He completely flipped everything around because he brought a no-nonsense approach, which was sorely needed for a long time with Washington. So that's the one thing that's not been talked about. It's one thing to bring him in as a head coach. Dan Snyder gave Ron Rivera power church and state because he knew exactly that's what the Washington football team needed. They didn't just need a complete change of a nickname. They needed to change everything. And within 1 year, they're no longer a sad sack organization. I'm not even talking about football from that standpoint, Ron Rivera. The fact that he was able to do that and beat cancer at the same time, that shows exactly how strong that dude is. Dan Snyder should thank his lucky stars that Ron Rivera was available, because if he had not moved on, or the Carolina Panthers had not moved on from him, can you imagine what the Washington football team would be right now, not having that guy as a football coach and really de facto general manager and pseudo owner of that football team? That's been the national perspective, from my perspective anyway, is that, man, it's one thing to make this a playoff team in the NFC least, but now there's a better future going forward off the football field with the Washington football team, because Ron Rivera was exactly the right guy that Daniel Snyder needed, but that Daniel Snyder did not think for a second was going to be out there to change things for Washington.
Speaking of, other coaches that are out there, All of the positions, I believe, have been filled up to this point, and still no Eric Bieniemy head coaching opportunity. Can you speak on that a little, like what that means for the Rooney Rule in its current state?
Well, the Rooney Rule, I get why it was designed, and I understand exactly why it was put in place. But if you don't hold people's feet to the fire, there's only so much that Rooney Rule can do, because the Rooney Rule did not say that you have to hire a minority candidate, or that you should strongly consider and open it up to everybody and really strongly consider that person is going to be there for the job. What the Rooney Rule, in my opinion, gave the NFL owners excuse to say, well, we brought in a minority candidate. Well, we don't believe he's the right guy, because no one is going to tell an NFL owner who to hire and how to go about it. You can put a Rooney Rule in place. And the fact that they tried to give considerations that, well, if you hire an African-American candidate or minority candidate, then the other team gets draft picks. Why are we rewarding a team for that for? You should hire the best person for the job. I don't care if they're black, white, alien, male, or female. If you believe they're the best person for the job, that is what should matter. At least that's what the NFL ownership has tried to tell us all these years. Well, that's a bunch of bull, because they're going to hire whoever they want, and that's how that's going to go. With the kind of resume and pedigree and success that Eric Bieniemy has had as an offensive coordinator, you're trying to tell me that you brought him in for an interview, but you weren't not even going to consider this guy for the job. But yet we heard that, well, he's not interviewing well. Did we see the press conference last week from Nick Sirianni, the Philadelphia Eagles? I'm sure that guy interviewed real well to get the Philadelphia Eagles job. You're trying to tell me that, nothing against him, not saying he hasn't earned it or did not earn an interview, but you're trying to tell me that that guy was a better candidate than a guy that has created or helped create one of the greatest offenses we've seen in the National Football League in the last 15 to 20 years. That guy only gets a cursory interview, but another guy like him gets hired, or Brandon Staley, former defensive coordinator, gets hired by the Rams. There's something amiss in that system. But if you don't hold their feet to the fire, and what I mean by that is not just calling them out. That's not going to do the trick. You got to start holding their feet to the fire when it comes to finances. But the NFL keeps printing money. And until that happens, it's going to be the same old, same old. And guys, I warned people when this whole thing happened. I said, watch Eric Bieniemy. He will not get a job in the NFL, at least this cycle. And it'll be a shame. And here we are, that he's going to be in the Super Bowl. But that guy should be a head coach in the National Football League. And it should have happened, not just this year, but even before this year.
Well, not just Bieniemy, but Byron Leftwich didn't get an interview, right? At
Todd
all. I mean,
Bowles
didn't get an interview for anything.
And Todd Bowles deserves another chance to be an NFL head coach, because the Jets disintegrated, and I think he's learned a lot from what happened with the New York Jets and what he's learned from being under Bruce Arians again as a defensive coordinator. He'd be a worthwhile choice to get a second chance as the NFL head coach. And that's not to take away from the fact that Robert Saleh got the job at the New York Jets. Last time I checked, that's a minority candidate. Muslim qualifies minority candidate. Same thing with Coach Kelly now at the Houston Texans, a guy who had been in the NFL as an assistant for 28 years. Talk about waiting and hanging around long enough. He exactly did that. The process is what bothers me. But until you tell owners, look, why are you not doing this? And if you continue to do this, I'm going to pull advertising. They hear that. They get real funny when you throw money into the equation. But nobody is going to do that. And until that actually happens, it's going to be guys like Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich. They may get an interview, but how strongly are they being considered to actually be a serious candidate to be a head coach in the NFL?
Freddie, how many draft picks are you willing to give up for Deshaun Watson if you're, say, a Washington and you're a quarterback away? Or are you in the camp that, I'm just not going to do it? I'm not going to give up 3 1s and 2 2s and a young starter. I guess for Washington, that'd be like Daron Payne.
Well, Big Doug and Big Pooh, can we agree that Deshaun Watson's an elite quarterback?
We definitely can agree on that.
Yep.
And we also agree that those kind of guys don't grow on trees?
Yep.
Obviously, yes.
Then you will part for the future to bring in a guy like that that'll make your present better. Because look what he did last year with essentially a glorified college football team with not good offensive line protection, inconsistent running game, inconsistent receivers. And that brother played as if his hair was on fire, played at an elite level. That's the kind of guy you say, I got unknown 3 future first-round picks, and I'll throw in a quarterback and another player. That guy's worth 5 players. That guy's worth 6 players. Because when he comes into your locker room, everything is just going to be raised. Everybody's going to say, I know that guy's going to ball out every practice. I know that guy is going to ball out every Sunday. And if I'm going to be that ragamuffin, I'm not going to be here too much longer. Guys still played hard with him, even though they knew they probably had no business being in a starting lineup on a National Football League team. The Houston Texans have stunk ever since they lost the playoffs last year, but it wasn't his fault. That team deteriorated around him on the field and in the management side. He is worth any kind of price you want to put out there. I'm not saying you got to get the kind of haul that the Houston Rockets got for James Harden, but if you believe in Deshaun Watson, it is worth mortgaging your future, because anybody that's going to want to play with him are going to be quality free agents that will want to sign up. All of a sudden, those become your draft with known commodities in the National Football League that want to play with the guy that is a complete known commodity in Deshaun Watson, no matter where he decides to go or who decides to trade for him.
Freddie, how do you see the situation in Houston ending up? Right now, you have the team saying we're going to keep Watson, and then you have Watson, who it finally came out he did demand a trade. Like, how do you see that play out before mini camps and things of that nature start?
I think it depends, Big Pooh, on if they can have a conversation with Deshaun Watson. And right now, he is not having any kind of communicado with anybody. And you know what? I don't blame him. If I'm Deshaun Watson, I'm sticking to my guns of trade demands because I don't trust that organization. You can't tell a man one thing and then you go behind his back and do something else. A guy that has a high character that Deshaun Watson has and will always have, in my opinion, to me, that's unforgivable. But if you're the Houston Texans, even though you gave him the contract and he earned that contract, having a no trade clause, you got to stick to your guns as far as possible. But that doesn't mean you're not trying to work out something behind the scenes. Because if you can't have a conversation with him, if you tried to have a conversation with him and he's just going like this, then you can't allow that distraction to stay in the building. Look at the Houston Rockets. I love that example because they wanted to keep him. And James Harden said the right things early. But then it got to the rubber in the road, and the Houston Rockets, not even 20 hours after he said that, he was on his way to Brooklyn because they said, look, we're not going to allow a distraction to stay in the building. This is not good for the current and future health of our organization. And by the way, the Houston Rockets right now have played better without James Harden than the Brooklyn Nets have played with James Harden. They have a better record right now. They won 6 in a row because they decided that we can't keep this here. He needs to be happy, and he needs to be happy out of here. The same situation can happen to Houston Texans. If you actually think that not having a conversation with him is going to make things better, then apparently you haven't been paying attention. If you are the Houston Texans, whatever haul you can get for him, you got to make that work. This way, you get a fresh start, he gets a fresh start, and you don't have to worry about having that black cloud, that whole unspoken tension that's going to be there that everybody knows because you're trying to make it work, and he does not want to make it work anymore.
It is Super Bowl week, Freddie. So let's talk a little bit about the game before we let you get out of here. It is the consummate professional against the young gunner. Boy, it's hard to bet on Tom Brady, but I don't know how you bet against Pat, right?
How do you bet against either one of these guys? Because that, to be honest, Big Doug, that's where we are because you got Captain America on one side, where he's been able to do what he's been able to do. And he's probably going to be playing football till he's 85, throwing 35 touchdown passes and everything like that. They're just going to roll him out in the wheelchair and then throw the cape on him like James Brown when he throws 4 touchdown passes off the field. But now you got a guy, Patrick Mahomes, who, for my money, is the biggest, baddest boy in the NFL jungle right now. And think about this. We may not even be seeing the best of Patrick Mahomes. We may not even be at the complete apex of where he's going to be in the National Football League because any throw he can make, he can do it. Any play he can make, he can do it. No one saw this coming to this level. We thought he was going to be pretty good, maybe great, but not this. He's an elite quarterback already as soon as NFL career. So you're exactly right. It's really hard to bet against both of these guys because of what Tom Brady has been able to do over 21 years, what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do in the last 3 years for the Kansas City Chiefs. And think about this. He is a bad play away from being in 3 straight Super Bowls.
That's right.
If they had not gone offsides in the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, they get the interception. They're on their way to play the Los Angeles Rams. We could be talking about a three-peat, a Michael Jordan-esque three-peat for Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City had that penalty not happened. And yet, even with all of that, you know, he loves looking to the belly of the beast, to Tom Brady, and saying, you know what, man? I had 3 different comebacks last year. People did not think we were going to win a Super Bowl. Do you actually think I'm afraid of you? And he got Tom Brady on the other side, where he's saying, man, before you think this torch is going to be taken away from me, you got to take it out of my cold, dead hands. I think I'm going to give this up easily. It is going to be so much fun watching these two guys and how the defenses can make who blink first. This has all the makings, gentlemen, of what we saw between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots. I thought Chris Collinsworth, who did the game for NBC, he said in the fourth quarter, and I could just see his face, like he could not believe he was seeing. He said, Al, this game is relentless. And I said, you thought exactly the same thing I thought. That game did not let you breathe. it could be the same situation coming up on Sunday with both of these quarterbacks, both of these offenses, both of these masterminds. We got Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians on one side, and Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid on the other side are going to concoct some different things. It is going to be so much fun to watch both of these guys have that against the opposing defenses.
I'm definitely expecting the shootout. I don't see any of these defenses holding neither one of these quarterbacks to under 25. Speaking of Kansas City, what has this run done for Andy Reid's reputation as a coach? I know when he left Philly, there was, people weren't as high on him as obviously as they are now, but what has this run in Kansas City done for him?
It's validated exactly what a lot of people always thought about Andy Reid, that he was a terrific coach. It wasn't his fault that his teams at times did not play well in big games, because the game plan was fine, but then a guy would drop a ball here, a guy would miss a block there. How can you put that on a coach where you put a game plan in and guys are not doing their assignments? There weren't too many times that the Eagles got the NFC Championship game and people ran away and hid from them. They gave the greatest show on turf, holy you know what, before losing in that NFC Championship game, before that team lost to the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots and Tom Brady's first one that happened in the early 2000s. But I think by going to Kansas City, and let's think about this, I think getting away from the Philadelphia environment may have been the perfect thing for Andy Reid, because no matter what he did, if he never won a championship, they were never going to let him rest about that. Don McNabb goes through that now. People say, you may have been a great quarterback, but you didn't win in Philadelphia. Are you really a Hall of Famer? People are questioning Andy Reid being a Hall of Fame head coach. And I said, are you out of your mind? That guy, no question, is a Hall of Fame head coach. Just because his team didn't win a championship doesn't mean he was terrible, because we don't put that next to Marv Levy. His team got the 4 straight Super Bowls of Buffalo Bills. They just ran into the Dallas Cowboys a couple of years, Washington another year, and the guy missed the field goal against the Giants. Or we have a different conversation about Marv Levy. Same thing with Bud Grant and the Minnesota Vikings. He got his team the 4 Super Bowls. They just had the misfortune running the Kansas City Chiefs one year, the Steelers another year, an undefeated Dolphins team another year. So those things do happen to great players and great coaches. But the fact that he was no longer part of the Philadelphia media and the Philadelphia fan base looking for a yeah, but for all his achievements, by going to Kansas City, people got a chance. Man, this guy is as great of an offensive coach this league has seen in a long time. Then you get a Patrick Mahomes to put all those toys around him and winning a championship. All of a sudden, we're not hearing about Andy Reid being an overrated coach. As far as I'm concerned, we should have never heard that to begin with, because this guy's been a terrific head coach in the NFL. It's just that it took that championship where people realized that and look back what he was able to accomplish in Philadelphia outside winning a Super Bowl.
All right, Freddie, what you care to make a prediction? Give us a score for the game?
I'm not going to give you a score. I'm leaning Kansas City, but that's because it's Tuesday. If you ask me this question tomorrow, I might be leaning towards Tampa Bay, because I think that's how even this game is going to be. And Big Pooh made the point in terms of, I don't see these defenses slowing these offenses and keeping them under 25. Outside of Mother Nature bringing a monsoon, that may be the only way we get a game underneath 25 points. These defenses are really good. But you got once-in-generational kind of quarterbacks, the old guy in Tom Brady and the young guy in Patrick Mahomes. No matter what you do, I'm a big believer of the old NBA line. Great offense beats great defense. You can have a great defensive game plan, and those two dudes will make a play, and they'll override anything you tried to do. So as of Tuesday, I'm leaning towards Kansas City. My mind could change at least 3 or 4 different times when that game rolls around on Sunday.
Freddie, we really appreciate your time today. This was a whole lot of fun.
My pleasure, guys. Let's do it again soon. Absolutely, man. Let's do it again, and we'll talk a little NBA, talk whatever you guys want to talk to. I'd love to do it again.
Will do. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too, my friends. Thanks.